Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to be talking about how everyone can really find someone to date in the age of internet apps, and why, if you're going on a whole bunch of dates and you can never find anybody, that the common denominator there may not be everyone else. You know what I mean? So, it's some tough love and some straightforward common sense as I try to provide generally. And we will get into that right after I tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was on your big swinging dick energy and why your wife actually hates it, even though everybody else likes it. Conversely, why if you married your wife when you were already very successful, why she may not like you, turning different than that if you are losing your confidence, etc., later in life. Both sides of the coin, as I usually try to give you. All right, so back to the episode at hand. So a lot of people try to date after divorce and they tell me it's impossible. It's like so impossible. Everybody sucks. All men/women are terrible. They got lots of funny stories about how everybody was so bad. And of course, when they tell these stories, it seems, of course, like everybody was so bad, because of course they're cherry picking the one weird thing about, the person, or maybe they had lots of weird things, whatever. But anyway, after a while, many months, certainly many years of dating, if you really cannot find somebody in the age of the internet, dating, zeitgeist, it's almost hard not to, right? Especially if you're anywhere near a city, because there's like so many people. You can find like a million different people just by sitting there and swiping. So if you can't, if you can't find anybody, why may this be? Well, let's go through it. As usual, the first one you got to look back at is your family of origin. That's always the first place that that your mind has to go to if you're really trying to do a deep dive and be curious about yourself. So you got to go back to your family of origin. I'm willing to bet anything that in your family of origin, there was a lot of negativity and a lot of, judgment, really. People were not that nice about other people. So if you grow up with parents that are always kind of insulting other people, then it's very hard to keep an open mind when you're dating because, like, for example, if you had a mother that criticized everybody's clothes, then you'll be sitting there at the restaurant, a guy will come in, his shirt is not that trendiest shirt, and already you're so turned off you can't even sit through the date barely because his shirt is so bad. And if you did not grow up in such a dysfunctionally judgmental family with a miserable mother, then it would be, you wouldn't really look at the shirt. You would, and people don't believe it. They're like, that shirt? Everybody would look at that shirt. I can't imagine how anybody would go on a second date with a man wearing that shirt. Or those shoes, or that jacket, or that hat, or, whatever the case may be, right? And for men, it would be a woman who's a little overweight or who doesn't dress sexy or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. And if you grew up in a judgmental home, then it's very, very easy to be judgmental. And nobody is perfect, truly. I mean, that sounds like a cliche, but it can be a really transformative moment for people who were raised in extremely black and white, judgmental, negative homes. Truly. I mean, like, really, just let it sink in. Nobody is perfect. Does that mean you're perfect? Can you be perfect? If nobody, like you agree nobody is perfect, right? You're intelligent enough to be listening to all these episodes of Dr. Psych Mom, the best podcast, the only podcast I've ever listened to. But, so maybe all the rest are really a lot better, but I wouldn't know. But the point is, you're a smart person that can at least follow along with my multiple tangents. And so therefore you got to admit intellectually that nobody's perfect. But yet, do you somehow feel that you are? Except for maybe some like throwaway lines, what I call job interview answers, where the people say that the problem that they're working on is they're too perfectionistic, like those kind of answers. So, when you do a deep dive, do you come up with that you're too nice? Is that like your only thing? I have a whole podcast on people who say that. It's like obviously garbage. But no, like there's like a lot of shit that's wrong with you too if we were holding you up to some sort of ideal of like what a movie star would look like if they were playing like a single person out on a date. Like you don't look 100% perfect. You don't act 100% perfect. And we've already established that you could be judgmental. So thus you're truly not perfect. So therefore, how could really somebody be perfect and what would perfect look like? A lot of women say, okay, so tall, rich, handsome, worldly, intelligent. And also he's going to put up with you being judgmental about like like anything that he has that's a little bit subpar. So also he has to be a little bit of a bitch because he has to put up with that. But then also, of course, you want an alpha. And this is not just women who act like this, right? So there's men, and this is the one that men want the most. They want a super open-minded woman in bed, right? Freak in the sheets, etc. So then I really tried to assess, oh, great, so you want somebody super open-minded. Man, she'll try anything in bed. She would make a hooker blush. And meanwhile, how open-minded are you? Well, I wake up at 4:56 and I have to because, if I don't get to the gym by 5:13, then I really can't be out of the shower by 7:12. And so, I'm like, and I'm making it funny here, right? But I hear versions of this, and so basically the least open-minded man in any version of any planet is looking for a woman that just thinks that it would be a hoot to try group sex, right? So how's that going to happen? That woman wants somebody fun, and you're not fun. So everybody has blind spots when it comes to themselves, but the goal of therapy and the goal really of life and evolving as a human being is to increasingly gain more objectivity. Full objectivity is completely outside of our reach, no matter how fact-based or rational, quote unquote, a person thinks that they are. There's really no rational actors, truly. We are emotional beings. We are made of flesh and blood. So everybody's always going to see themselves through a different lens than the majority of other people would see them. But you can work to, decrease the disconnect between how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. So really, the number one thing that anybody is looking for in a partner is kindness. And many are looking for open-mindedness despite not being open-minded themselves. So a woman wants a man who wants to travel and do whatever and hang out with her friends and just, play it by ear. But then she herself will not go outside the comfort zone physically at all. And the inversion of that is, the guy who wakes up at 4:56, but he wants a woman who's just real down to do anything, right? So open-mindedness is a big one. Kindness. So is it very kind to judge the woman's outfit or the man's outfit as they walk toward you, or their intelligence or their resume? Not really. It's really not kind to be very judgmental, but yet you want somebody kind. How does it work? So first of all, you have to look in at yourself and say, gee, this is a free market economy of dating here. Why am I not partnered if I want to be? Is probably something to do with me. My criteria are very rigid, and the couple people that maybe I was attracted to didn't seem to be attracted back to me. So there seems to be a disconnect in how I view myself and my marketability and how other people view me. Maybe I could really do one of two things. I could work to make myself much more marketable. And I've talked about this on previous podcasts. The number one way to do that is to work on your personality. You can't do as much with looks as, the media would have us think, given as the media wants to sell us clothes and surgeries and just all sorts of shit for our looks, gym memberships. You're going in a certain range there for what you look like. Most of us aren't going to turn into fashion models or bodybuilders or what have you. But the personality is really where you can change things and really where the magic can happen. People can get a lot more kind, open, and caring by working on themselves and thinking back to how they did not receive such things at home, having some self-compassion for how they really never learned to be very kind, because these people did not. They learned to judge others, and lest ye be judged yourself, and to kind of refuse to engage on anything where you get feedback yourself, but only turn that judgmental eye outward and judge everybody else. So that's how you were taught. So it's not a shock that you end up that way, but you can work on it. You can work on not being that way. And the first way to work on it, besides, therapy can obviously help, but also kind of really, really deciding on purpose to find positive things about those around you instead of negative things. So when you go on dates, instead of saying, it wasn't a fit because of X, Y, Z, you could say, maybe it will be a fit because of ZYX, right? Maybe these other things are personality traits in a person that I would want to explore. Or maybe the fact that they do XYZ could be fun instead of, oh, just something I don't do. You know, whether it's that a woman says, oh, I would never be with that guy because he, does these extreme sports and I'm not an extreme sports person. Or the guy that says about the woman, oh, I would never be with her because she has too many kids, that it would be too much, right? Like whatever the case may be, or anything. I mean, people get rid of potential mates for like the silliest, objectively like small, superficial kinds of reasons, like some people even for like taste, on like books or art or music or hobbies or whatever. Meanwhile, people change like hobbies fairly frequently. You're not probably doing the same hobbies now that you were 15 years ago. So you probably won't in 15 years be doing all the same hobbies. You probably, hopefully, will learn to evolve in your taste of music and books and everything else if you're exposed to other things too. You may add to your current preferences. You may have different preferences in future. One of the things that I hope to teach my kids more than anything is that you don't know how you're going to change. Change is a constant. Everybody that's 14 years old thinks they're going to have that musical taste forever and those friends forever and that fashion taste forever and they're never not going to be fun and spontaneous. Well, then here everybody is in their 40s, right? And almost nobody has much continuity with that version of yourself that you were so convinced was the core real you, And everybody feels like that. Every kid feels like when they grow up, they're going to be the adult that still wants to play freeze tag, if you haven't had enough of my freeze tag analogy from my freeze tag posts. But yet, nobody does. So really, you don't know how you're going to change. If you open yourself up to potentially pursuing relationships with people who at first may not seem like they check 100 of your 100 boxes, then you are opening yourself up to a future that could look a little bit different than you expected, but also be very happy. Closed-mindedness is really the bane of my existence as a therapist because I see how it keeps people stuck and it keeps people lonely and it keeps people in real unhappy situations. And generally, this is, almost really all the time. I just hate to say all the time, but I've never seen that this is not a worldview that is inculcated at home, where parents were judgmental and were very rigid. And sometimes they weren't overtly judgmental, but there was only one way to do things, only one way to think about things. And maybe this was a religious way, or maybe it was, completely unrelated. And it was just, this is how we do things in this house. This is the way that you become successful. This is the way that you act with other people. We don't trust anyone. We don't this, we don't that, whatever. Or maybe it wasn't a we, maybe it was just a parent modeling that they felt this way. But when you grow up with a closed-minded parent, and it's extremely difficult to put yourself out there, and sometimes it's actually still related to the actual parents themselves rather than a philosophy they espouse, such that the woman who judges the man's shirt cannot imagine literally introducing this actual man with that shirt to her mother, who would look down on him for his shirt. And she's like 80 years old, And if that's the case, then you got to go to therapy because your mother could live another 20 years. And what are you're going to still be thinking always about how you could introduce her to somebody and what she's going to say. And this is the reality for many people, for many adult children of dysfunctional homes, specifically involving judgmental or negative parents. They just literally are terrified still of disapprobation by the parent, and that colors so many of their decisions as an adult. So they're not even really an adult. They're an adult child, truly, and they are still trying to get the elusive, almost, really impossible approval. Because if the guy's shirt was good, then the mother would probably have some problem with his job. If the job was good, she'd have problem with his kids. If his kids were good, she'd have problems with how much money he makes, whatever, So this is really something to think about. If you're always dating, and this is for both genders, and you always are finding problems with people, and the few people, let's go to the other side. Why are there a few people then that you're attracted to? You say, well, shit, I'm not all bad. I do find some people, that I'm attracted to, but they never like me. Well, you know why they may not like you? Because they're like you. They're too judgmental, but you can't do anything about those people. Can't tell them to be more open-minded. What you want to do is to yourself be more open-minded, kinder, and just generally more generous of spirit, such that you have even more options, because everybody likes a nice person. I mean, I don't know what people say when they are saying that men only go for like hot women or whatever. Like, everybody isn't a hot woman. Every woman is not a hot woman. And I have a whole podcast about this, about men don't only want supermodels. And there was a corollary, women don't only want rich men, right? Yeah, sure, it's nice. Nobody's going to kick a supermodel or like a super rich guy out of bed like the first time. However, this is not the majority of the humans on this planet. So thus, we must conclude that there's plenty of happily married people where the woman is not traditionally hot or the man is not traditionally successful. And we see that all around us if we open our eyes to look for such things, even though it goes against our heuristic of the way that the world should work so frequently. We we gloss over those with our eyes, and like every human, confirmation bias, we look more at the examples of, the things that confirm what we pre-existing think about the world that we were taught from our parents, which maybe in this case is that men only go for hot women. But yet if you switch it to men go for women that make them happy, women that are kind, women that are loving, you could see a million examples of those. And had you been taught to look for that, then that's what you would have been looking for all along. All right, so hopefully this was a good pep talk to expand your criteria on dating apps, to go on dates with more people, and to be less judgmental when you see them. And if this really is a sticking point, the judgmentalness, this is something that therapy can really help with. Is figuring out the origin of the excessive judgment, how it's impacted you badly, which I'm sure it has, and how to move forward in more flexible and healthy ways, particularly so that you're not at risk of teaching your kids the same faulty lens, of viewing the world as filled with so many disappointing people, right? That's not a good way to think about the world, nor is it true, but it certainly feels that way if you were raised in a negative home. All right, guys, hope you got something out of this, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.